I just want to get one thing straight. The gas companies don't set the price. It's the free market that sets the price. And that is me saying that, but it's also Jason Furman, who was President Obama's economic advisor. And I can read you a direct quote. I quote, "When more people want to buy things than companies are capable of making, prices go up. That's just the law of supply and demand." Companies always want to maximize their profits. I don't think they're doing it any more this year than any other year, end quote. So it really comes down to a supply issue, and I think that our policies, more accurately, the radical anti-oil and gas, anti-hydrocarbon policies of the left, has artificially reduced the supply. We've done it because capital is not moving in to oil and gas infrastructure projects. There's a lot of hesitancy. Also, regulation is up, which is making it hard to expand on land that is permitted. But Ranking Member McMorris Rogers, as we heard Ranking Member Cole talk about the production decreasing, oil production is down. It's declined over 1.5 million barrels per day since Joe Biden took office. What do you attribute to that decline in production?
I believe from day one, the Biden administration has sent a pretty clear message that they are opposed to this industry. And it began with a Keystone, and I hear what others are saying about Keystone, but overall, pipelines right now, Line 5 in Michigan is under, there's concern about whether that pipeline is going to be able to continue. And pipelines are the safest, most environmentally friendly way to move product around. One of the biggest challenges right now to increasing production is pipeline capacity, and yet over and over the administration has been quite a damper on pipelines. If we want to export LNG from the United States of America, and we have an abundant amount of LNG, help our allies in Europe, in Eastern Europe, it would be a great way to help our allies that are now purchasing 40% of their natural gas from Russia, because the Biden administration said it was okay for Nord Stream 2. It's okay for Russia to use a pipeline to bring natural gas into Europe and not pipelines in the United States. Anyway, there's been a signal sent by this administration, a damper on new pipelines, a damper on leases, a damper on drilling, delays on getting these permits. You know, we hear a lot about the 9,000 leases. These are leases to explore or not explore. That's one step of it, and then you have to actually get a permit to drill. There's a lot involved in bringing product from the exploration stage to actually to the pump. And this administration from day one has been saying that they want to shut it down. And then calling Venezuela, calling OPEC and asking them to produce more. It has resulted in gas prices going up, energy prices going up, and us moving away from being American energy independent, which was so important.
Yeah, it's quite amazing that all through the election cycle, we heard how we need to reduce the amount of energy production, specifically petroleum production in the United States. Yet as soon as we're in a crisis, it's somehow Saudi Arabia's fault for not producing enough oil. I mean, it's quite the mental gymnastics you have to get through is quite amazing. But let's just talk about the pipeline. We're hearing that the Keystone XL Pipeline, had it been completed, would not have made a difference. I believe that's truly absolutely inaccurate. Would you like to expand upon what you were saying?
Yes. So the Keystone XL Pipeline would have been 800,000 barrels of oil from an ally, maybe our best friend, Canada. I believe we should be building that alliance instead of having to go to dictators in Venezuela or Iran or OPEC countries and asking them to produce more. And it would have been the most environmentally friendly pipeline. It was going to be the first green pipeline ever. It was cutting edge. Again, it was leading in technology and innovation to continue to accomplish the goal of bringing down carbon emissions. It is a false choice right now that is being presented. What the chairman was laying out, that it has to be either or. I believe that we can be energy independent. That should be our goal, to be energy independent and continue to lead the world in bringing down carbon emissions, which we have been doing. And our oil and natural gas is cleaner than anything coming out of Russia, but it's disappointing and frustrating to me how often that is just simply ignored, what our technology and innovation is meaning for accomplishing both goals, energy independence and bringing down carbon emissions, leading the world.
Thanks. You also were mentioning when we were talking about pipelines, just the fact that we would be in a much better position in terms of international power. For example, it's just not the Keystone XL Pipeline that's been shut down, and that the language from the administration and the left has caused a freeze in investment, like I said, in oil and gas infrastructure. So, for example, I believe it was Mariner East 2 that was shut down. It wasn't shut down because the government came in and did it. It's because the investors didn't want to come in because they didn't think they'd get a return on the investment. And what that could have, I believe this is the correct pipeline, but it would be from Pittsburgh to Philadelphia. So imagine a world where that pipeline went through and you were taking liquefied natural gas from Western Pennsylvania, shipping it through a very safe pipeline, environmentally friendly pipeline, and then to the port in Philadelphia, getting that to Gdansk, Poland, and then supplying Ukraine and our allies in Europe with energy instead of Russia. There's another pipeline I could talk about, I believe the Constitutional Pipeline that would run from Pittsburgh to Boston. New York will not let it go through, but instead of New Englanders having to rely on dirty Russian gas, which, by the way, burns tons of carbon emissions, just bringing it over here and fuels Putin. Or that's what we have in the alternative of just using LNG from Western Pennsylvania that is much cleaner. But talking about Ukraine, I hear that all of this is the fault of Vladimir Putin. I find that very hard to believe, especially if you look at the price increases before the war in Ukraine ever started. Would you like to expand upon that?
Yes. Well, I mentioned that when President Biden took office, the average gallon of gas in the United States of America cost $2.38. And it went up $1 in the first year, and it has continued to increase. You mentioned the pipeline to Massachusetts. Since President Biden took office, we had increased our Russian imports of crude oil by 17% in the first year, importing into Massachusetts, importing into a state like Washington State. So we were seeing our production going down in the United States, the damper on American energy, at the same time that we were increasing our imports from Russia. Now, thankfully, this Congress did take action and made clear that we should not be importing from Russia. There is more that we could have been doing for years. The Energy and Commerce Committee, we traveled to the Ukraine. Well, we traveled to Europe and Ukraine in 2015. That was the spring after Putin had shut down the pipelines into Ukraine, using natural gas as a weapon then. It was a threat. You either do what I want you to do, or I'll shut down the pipeline. And they were asking us then to provide more supply so they wouldn't be so dependent upon President Putin, Europe and Ukraine. And yet there has been this resistance to more clean natural gas in the United States during the Shale Revolution that has just exploded here, providing an abundant amount of natural gas that has helped us bring down our carbon emissions, and it's the way that the rest of the world. It would help our allies if we were supplying natural gas to Europe, and it would help bring down carbon emissions worldwide. It's one of the best things that we could do.
I think if the war has done anything, it's really shown that energy production is the equivalent of national security. And it certainly is directly proportional to the amount of influence we have abroad. But talking about issues abroad again, I've heard a lot of talk about other oil-producing nations, and if they were to increase the flow of crude oil to the United States, it's my understanding that even if that were to happen, it would take 8 months, maybe a year, for that to even hit the market, because our refinery capability is far below what it should be. Would you like to talk about the fact that the policies from the left have led to a lack of investment in our refinery capability?
Yes, I want to see America lead, and it means having more refining capability, more pipeline capability. But yet the regulatory climate has made it very difficult to upgrade plants, impossible to build new refining plants in the United States of America. This is where the United States, we lead in environmental regulations. We have the highest environmental standards, clean air, clean water standards, and yet some are willing to import from other countries, turn a blind eye to what's going on with the environment, and instead of actually producing here in the United States.
Yeah, I think if we could just, there's two rules that we could live by with this argument. That is, again, the supply and demand argument that Dr. Furman put much better than I could ever put in the quote I opened with, but also the fact that capital goes where capital is treated best. And right now, capital does not believe it will be treated well in the hydrocarbon sector, and that's one of the reasons why, again, we have artificially deflated our production. But, Madam Chair, thank you for the time, and I yield back.